inside, or?
I was just saying, in case you still want people to, I'm listening to the people talking out there, and I need to listen to you.
This is the beginning of a series that we are going to do as part of the career development program, eventually culminating in the practice of writing purchase agreements, such that they're complete and accurate, and we're going to get there. But in order to get there, we need to start someplace. And the place that you need to start is car.org, which is the California Association of Realtors webpage. If you're really new and you've never gone to car.org, you need to go there and you need to figure out how to log in. It's not that complicated. There's a button that says register now, and it's going to want you to find your NRDS number, which they're going to help you look up. You're supposed to have your NRDS number tattooed someplace on your body, visible. Well, maybe that's not right. But anyhow, nobody knows their NRDS number. So you have to look it up. And then once you've logged in, this is what you're going to see. Now, one of the things that I like to start with is notice there's a upcoming webinars and outreaches. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is putting some of these on the schedule or schedule, depending on where you're from. And these are different webinars on how to use some of the different aspects of ZipForms. Also, if you're logged in, you see there's a button that says education, and there's webinars and videos. And if you click on that, you're going to see a schedule, which is taking a little while to load. And the schedule shows a whole, do you know that you have a free, well, it's not free, but included in your CAR, NAR, and Santa Clara County Association of Realtors dues, access to a mobile platform for filling out forms online. Did you know that? So you've already paid for it. There's videos on that. By the way, I also have a website which is called Do the One Thing. I'm waiting for Gary Keller to send me a nasty letter complaining about that. And what I'm doing is I'm putting some of these videos here for those of you that aren't you can't find them on your own, right? And if you clicked on this, you'll see that I've already loaded some videos, and the videos are from ZipForms training. But what I wanted to do, so you're thinking, well, gee, I don't really need to be here. I could just watch your videos. There's a few things that I wanted to cover that's not really in them. And all I have to do is find, where am I? Where am I? car.org. Did I lose it already? I lost it already. So I don't know. How about, let's see if I'm still logged in. I have no idea where it went. So I'm still logged in. Cool. So videos are online. One of the things that you're going to need to master as a real estate agent is how to fill out forms and how to use the online software. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to do e-signatures. And by the time we're done, you're going to actually, we're going to do something and send, you'll see. If you brought your computer, you could follow along, but the place where we're going to start, there's a, it says here, zip form, transaction forms, access now. We're going to click on that. There is a version that you can download to your computer. I wouldn't bother with that because this is up to date. It's more easily up to date, the online version, than it is the one that you download. And we're waiting. All right. And we're waiting. All right, so I've created way too many of these where the place, what I would like to do is to make this as painless as possible. And what that means is that what you really want to do is to create a buyer template and a seller template so that you're not having to rethink all the time what you're doing. And notice up here, I'm just going to go through this. There's transactions, there's templates, there's contacts, and by the way, I'm logged in with somebody else's account, which doesn't, you can actually import contacts from a comma separated value file into the database. so that you don't have to type out their names, addresses, and phone numbers every time. Now, for some of you, that this may be useful because you're going to have hundreds of contracts you're going to be writing up in the next 12 months, probably. And so it'll wear your fingers out manually typing in their names and phone numbers. But for example, all of the buyers that you're dealing with, if you export them out of Google or Yahoo, or God forbid, AOL, you could import them into the contact database of ZipForms, so you don't actually have to manually type them. I just thought I would share that with you. You also can put in other people that you might want to share forms with. Now, who might you, that's not a real estate agent, not a broker, doesn't work for Keller Williams, doesn't have a real estate license necessarily, who might you want to share copies of forms with? Transaction, well, I heard, not the lender. Does the lender want to see a copy of the purchase agreement?
Yes.
Right, so some forms. Well, we're not going to get into that right now, but there's some things the lender doesn't want to see, but the lender wants a copy of the purchase agreement. Who else wants to see a copy of the purchase agreement? The broker, the transaction coordinator would get that taken care of. Escrow company, right? Depending on, right? So you notice you could also put in the name of your favorite lenders, all the different title reps. So I'm just saying that could you be doing this now rather than doing this later, right? I've coached people, if that's the right word, that were in a state of panic because they were writing an offer and they couldn't figure out, they had handwritten the client's email address on like a cocktail napkin and it wasn't working and they were trying to spell. Why not import all of your contacts? Templates, we're going to do that first. Now, you can actually import and export. We're not going to get into that. Clauses we're not going to get into, but what we're going to do is we're going to see the plus sign. So I'm in templates and I'm clicking on the plus sign, and this is for a new template. And when this pops up, it looks like a transaction. I'm starting with templates because I want to, but this would look like a transaction. This is sort of the same thing you're going to see, but we're going to call it something, and I'm going to call this buyer template, and I'm going to put in my name so the other person knows what's going on. He's used to this. I'm going to click on purchase and leave it for residential, and notice it says apply template. Now, I happen to know, because I've done this class before, there's a bunch of them here, but and so we're going to pretend that those aren't there, and we're going to create our own template from scratch. But it would allow you to modify a template, right? Which would mean that you could take some of an existing template and change certain things. Does everybody realize that there's more than one purchase agreement? Right? So there's the residential purchase agreement. What's another one? What's another one? You're going to have to share with the whole class. So there's a residential. What's another one? Commercial. There is a commercial, right? We're not doing that a lot. What's another one? Multifamily. It's not really called that, though, is it? Yeah, it's an income property purchase agreement, right? So certainly duplex, triplex, fourplex. There's an argument to be made that even if somebody were buying a single family home for income purposes, I don't know, right? If it's already rented out. So there's an income. How about probate, right? If it's there's a probate purchase agreement, right? So you understand there's more than one purchase agreement. And right now we're just going to do a basic buyer template, right? You understand you may not be writing up enough probate offers, but if you were, there's a bunch of different forms. So what we might want to do is start with one of our basic ones and add to it. Enough about that. I'm going to click on save. So what this has done is it's created a blank area here. Now over here, there's a thing called folders. I'm not going to really dwell into that today, but you can create a whole bunch of folders where you can store stuff. All right, now some of the stuff when we get to the listing agreement where we're going to be doing that later. The office has a whole stack of forms that need to be filled out when you list a home. There's a stack of forms that you need to fill out when you're representing a buyer that are not part of the California Association of Realtors standard forms. All right, so for example, we have a drought advisory, right? It's very dry reading, but boy, I went over that. That one died. But but anyhow, and we could store these forms in different folders. We're not going to worry about that now. So the templates are a time-saving tool. So now that we've done that, notice what it's doing is it's asking us to add documents. Notice how the all forms just popped up. If you know the name of a form, you could type and search it. Notice there's libraries. Now, the libraries include such things as, well, we're going to pretty much do the California Association of Realtors library today. EPUBs, that's a online drinking, drinking is, it's, maybe that's not right. EPUBs is a place where they store a bunch of required forms like the environmental hazards book, the seismic safety, the lead-based paint, and a whole bunch of other things. There are forms from DRE, there's sample letters. We're just going to stick with the California Association of Realtors. One of the things that I would suggest that you be is a bit curious, maybe, and just like sort of click on these. Now, the first form I would start with is the cover sheet. And we're putting in, notice it puts the cover sheet in. I'm going to show you why. And then the other forms that we're going to need, and I'm going to give you a list, although I'm going to talk a little bit slower once we get into it. What is the first form we're supposed to fill out when we're writing an offer? Agency. And that form is called, how would you find it? If you type in agency, how about agency? Are we going to find it if we click on agency? And the answer is no. All right. Disclosure. It's actually got a, you start to remember the initials. The initials are, how about DA? Let's see if it's, and why is it not? Maybe because I didn't select the right library. Let's go back here. How come it's not doing this? Ah, there we go. Back. So I wanted to let you see how it works if you go back and forth. DA, and it's called disclosure. Boy, there's a lot of them. How about AD? Agency disclosure? All right, so I typed in disclosure. This is why you want to do this in advance rather than when your clients are watching you. There are 3 forms included in agency. One is the listing firm to the seller, which we don't need. The other one is the selling firm to the buyer. We're going to need that. Now that form, notice it also says selling firm to seller. That could be, we could use the same form or we could make it a separate form. Right? I'm going to go ahead and click on it and add it over, and we're going to look at each one of these. So the other form we definitely need is the RPA, which is the residential purchase agreement. Now, there's a bunch of them that we may or may not need, some of which are going to come in automatically. So what I'm going to do is, examples would be, there's something called the, do I really want to say this? So there's the statewide buyer and seller advisory. Now I'm going to add that, but what you have to be careful with is that a lot of times the listing agent is going to provide you with a stack of all these disclosures. The reason I'm putting it in, because sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't do anything, right? But if the seller has already given you a statewide buyer and seller advisory, don't make out a new one and send it to them. It irritates the listing agent and the seller if you're asking them to sign forms they've already signed. And another one is called the market conditions advisory. And Again, if that's already been provided by the listing agent, don't do it again. All right. Now, the reason there are others, what's another one that we usually include? Some of you that have, there's a consent to represent disclosure and consent for representation of more than one buyer or seller. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on that. The reality is that the new form already includes that, right? It's sort of hardwired in, right? But I've decided to throw it in just for laughs and giggles.
The new RPA includes that?
It does.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So if you're submitting an offer, should you include?
Yes.
Include that that document as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And it may be that the seller's already signed one. Is it legal if the same form exists in a transaction, one is signed by the seller but not the buyer, and the other one is signed by the buyer but not the seller? Is that okay, or do they both have to sign exactly the same form? It's okay. Right. As long as there aren't any differences in the wording of the form, as long as you get one that they both have signed. All right. Now, the fun part, which I know you've been waiting for, as we go across here, apply the template. So if we're in a template, so we're not going to do a new transaction, add document, folder, delete, save as a PDF, send transaction information. What we want to do is we're going to click on the cover sheet. And there's two ways of what I'm going to do. First of all, by the way, it saves like every few seconds anyhow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to the back button because I want to show you there's two ways of doing something with it. One is that you could go to contacts and create a new contact, and you could put in your information, right? There's a reason to do this. You could import your information. You could add a photo, your photo or somebody else's. But there's a point to this. So I'm going to click on the buyer template that we just created, and I'm going to click on cover sheet, and I'll show you why we want to do this. So this is a template. Do we know if this is a template? We don't know who the buyer is, right? Because this is a template. We don't know buyer one, buyer two. We don't know seller. We don't know landlord. We don't know property. We don't know escrow information. But wait a second. Do we know the selling broker information? So what you want to do is to get our DRE information, right? And by R, I mean Keller Williams Realty Silicon Valley. So that's the Keller Williams Realty Silicon Valley, and our address. And does anybody know our office BRE number?
013-27739.
And Joni wins the cookie.
Yay.
And we put in our address, our state, confusion. No, it's not right. The zip code, the office phone number, which I never call. All right, I'm not really doing this. The sales agent name. And your BRE number, your phone number. What's a fax?
408-626-6875.
Actually, when I said that, my question really was, what's a fax? All right, what is that? You put in your cell phone number, and you can put in your fax number. You might run across a really old real estate agent with a fax machine, and your email address. And I'm going to put in one of my email address. Okay. Now, the reason that we're doing this is, remember, we're doing this in the template. And the reason that we're doing this is that when we save this template and we have a buyer and we're going to write an offer and we launch the template, all that information is going to be already filled out. Otherwise, I wish I could charge by the hour, right? When I help people, because sometimes I sit there and I watch them spend 15, 20 minutes typing in this information to write an offer, right? I mean, and then again, and I can't tell you how many years I've lost watching agents type in this. So if you do it one time in a template and you save the template, it's all going to be there. All going to be there, right? We don't know any of this other information. We don't know. We don't care. Now we're going to click on save, and we're going to go to back. And what we're going to do now is I want to just show you, I'm going to focus this one on more on buyers. I'm going to focus, well, what would happen if you have a transaction? Okay, now notice we're looking at this. Notice it says documents. We've added documents, but notice it also says parties. And if we clicked on parties, it says buyer contacts, seller contracts, and service providers. Notice so far that's the only, not much of a party, but that's the only party. If I click on buyer contacts, there's none, seller, none, none. All parties is the one person we put in. So in other words, if we had imported our buyer's contact information, they would be there. We could import them under buyer contacts. So all of their information would be there, and it would pre-populate the forms. See, I don't know about you guys, but I would just soon not spend a lot of time typing, right? And so even if it was a very short import, I would probably rather import their name and their email address and their phone numbers out of my contact management system directly in to ZipForms rather than having to sit there and manually type it out. Right. And by the way, where the world is moving is towards using this on mobile devices, which did I mention there's a mobile app that you already own, whether you know it or not. And if you've imported this information, you can touch the screen and there's a little drop down and it'll just populate the information into it. Property, we're going to look at that. Now notice it gives us some information here about a property for this template, but we're not going to change that. The only party we want under templates is the purchase agreement. I mean the selling agent, the office, and you. All right, so now that we've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create, I should get rid of some of these, the ones that have my name. So I'm going to delete that one just because I've done this too many times. So are you sure you want to delete it? Sure, I want to delete it. Okay, so we've created a template, and let's say our buyer has found a house and they'd like to make an offer. Yay. What we do is we go here, we're under transactions, right, across the top, we're under transactions, we're going to click on new transaction, and we're going to click on purchase, we're going to leave it to be residential, and we're going to say this is a sample. Now, let me just, how would you name the transaction? Probably the best way to do that is the address of the property, so that when you're looking at it, it could be the name of the client, right? For the buyer, right? It could be the name of a client. It's usually the name of a property. By the way, if we wrote one offer for a client and it wasn't accepted, might we have to write another offer later? If we saved that offer as a template, then all of their contact information would be saved into this new template. In other words, we would create John and Mary Smith template, right? So we don't have to figure out their names and their email addresses and their phone numbers. We've got our contact information. Do you understand? You can keep evolving these templates. So we're just going to say 123 Main Street. I'm going to say, I'm going to put this in. And it's a purchase. Apply the template. And there's our template. Notice you can add a photo. A photo of what? The house. And will that show up anywhere? You don't know. It shows up on emails that you send to people. Right? There, it'll actually have a little icon with a thumbnail of the house, right? Which sort of looks cool. Not that difficult to do. If you click on add photo, well, it's going to ask, where's the photo? Right? And you find it and you upload the photo. It's a nice little touch. So I'm going to click on save. Now what this is going to do, I've just created a transaction, and notice what it did. It imported all those different forms automatically. See, they're all there. And here we are in the transaction with all the forms. And yes, if we open up our cover sheet and we scroll down, please don't make me a liar. Is it not there? Where is the property information, escrow information, transaction? For some reason, didn't I save it? That's really weird. Let me look at templates again. Buyer template. Maybe that isn't the one I just imported. It's no. So what that means is you're not going to have the problem that I have, which is I've created too many templates over the time. And that one is sort of blank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this one. I'm going to apply a different template. So we're going to apply a different template. I must have clicked on the wrong one. Come on. Come on.
So will it automatically delete everything that's in there now?
Yeah. So buyer template, how about this one? Mike Devlin. See, I've created more than one template. So what it will do, there we go. You're going to see it's saved. See, I did this on purpose so you'll see the value of getting rid of old templates. See, there it is. All of our contact information is in it. Okay. Cool. So we're starting out with a bunch of stuff already pre-typed. And you know you're going to be writing offer after offer after offer, right? So you don't want to be typing in all this information. The next cool thing that I would like to talk about, so now that we're in a transaction, it has documents. We've already added them. By the way, we can add other documents. All right, now if we click on add a document or we go over here, this will pop open. But we can click on, oops, I didn't want to really add a folder. If we're going to add a document, it's going to ask us to browse. Now, notice what it's doing is it's looking on my computer. So by documents that we might be adding, the office has a stack, which we're going to be sharing with you for a nominal fee, of forms that we would like to be filled out in a transaction. Now, my feeling is, you've heard of the paperless transaction or the paperless office, is I got tired of having people sign pieces of paper, make Xeroxes, copies of the pieces of paper to give them a copy of it, scanning the piece of paper so I can send it to, right, you understand, that seems like way too much work. So all of those forms, we can upload them. They're all PDFs. We could upload them into our template even, so that they're all there. And the digital ink, which is the program that's incorporated into the ZipForms, will allow you to sign these PDFs. In other words, you can take all of the forms, even the ones that are coming out of the printer or as a PDF, upload them and put in signature blocks, date blocks, fill out the forms. Did you know you can even fill out parts of the forms using the software and send it to people? We're going to actually go through all this. By the time we're done with this series, we're going to go through all of the forms that you need to fill out and how to put together a complete package. There's a really fun class that Lindsay and I do together on all the disclosure forms. She's our transaction coordinator. We go through all the forms. So that's that. Other things, I'm not going to print, save as a PDF, send, collaborate. Now this is an interesting thing, collaborate. If we click on this, what this will allow you to do is to so I clicked on collaborate and I have to pick on which ones. It says I have to add a collaborator. Now what a collaborator will allow you to do is to allow someone else to help you fill out the form. Who might you want to help you fill out your forms? It could be, if you're in our launch program and you have a mentor, right? You might be the mentor. It might be me, right? If you don't have a mentor. And so your options are, by the way, what most people do, they give Lindsay their login to the CAR website. But if you're nervous about giving people the login, I don't know what you think she's going to do with it, but you could allow somebody to collaborate, and what that would allow them to do is edit the form for you, right? So if you sent me, your choices are, if you want me to help you, is I'm not necessarily going to leave where I am and drive to where you are. Not necessarily. It depends on how far away I am to sit in a room and look at, right? You understand? But if you add me as a collaborator, that means I have to be in. I would be able to edit your forms for you, but not see all of them, not see any of your secret ones, right? So we're not going to, why don't we just not go there? We're going to go back. So we're not going to actually do collaboration. Come on, back. All right, how about this? Cancel. Back. Documents. Close. I'll just close this. Okay. So, but I just thought I'd share that with you. E-sign we're going to get to later. Parties. We click on parties. And one of the things that we can do is we could add a new party right now. Property, I'll get to something even more fun. We're going to go here. I could do it from here. Let me go back. I didn't mean to click quite so far back. Let me show you the next tip, which I think will save you a lot of time. See where it says property? One of the choices are transaction information or MLS Connect. This is for really lazy agents. So I clicked on MLS Connect, and notice what it's giving us are the 3 MLSs that the system is connected to. Which one is our basic MLS? MLS listings.
Yeah.
Does anybody know what CR MLS is? Coyote Ravine, no. That's the California Regional MLS, which includes a whole bunch of different areas. Like a whole bunch of different areas, including East Bay. Right, and Walnut Creek and Concord and a whole bunch of different areas. SF is San Francisco MLS. So we're going to just, so let's say this would help us write an offer on, we're going to stick to our MLS. Right, now what I've done is I pulled up in another, this is a listing. Okay, so why don't we assume that we're writing an offer on Comanche 5630. Anyhow, why don't we assume we're going to write an offer on 5630 Comanche Court. Looks like a beautiful house. What you want to do is you need the ML part as well. I've highlighted it and did a Control C. Now let me see if I can find. And what we're going to do is, note we're MLS listings residential. We're pasting that in with the ML part. I'm going to click on include property photo just for fun. And I'm going to click on find.
Can you slow down for just a minute?
No. Yes, I'll do this again.
Okay.
All right. I'll cancel it. I'll start all over. So one point to start with, it would help to begin with the MLS number of the listing that you're writing an offer on. I would write that down if you hadn't thought of that. So what happened, what I'm going to do is close again. So we're under transactions. We went to property. We're clicking on MLS Connect. We're not leaving it at CR MLS because I don't know what's going to happen if we put in our MLS number there. And we're going to go to MLS listings.
Should I be able to type into that? I can't type into that field.
What? You can't type into what form?
No, I'm in the same place. And the arrow button does not give you a menu option either.
I can't.
So if you don't have the drop-down list, don't trip.
Yeah.
Put in ML 814-50210.
Where?
Don't you have this MLS? listing ID, ML 814-50210. I may have because I'm logged in as Mr. Seville, you have a special access.
Then import it.
Then click on, I include property photo. Sometimes that oftentimes doesn't work. Click on find. If you can't import until you found it. Click on find. And then once it's found it, it's going to fill this information in down below. Assuming that we haven't totally messed up. And believe me, if you're writing an offer and you need help, I'll be happy to help you do this. Now, I don't know if the picture is coming through because of that, but once it's found it, and of course, it does allow us to pick some other choices. You have to have the right, if this is an income property, you need to choose it. But it's found it. We're going to click on import. Do you want to replace, it always says this, say yes. And notice what it's done is it's filled out all of this information here. I don't think the picture rarely works. Now, I'm going to click on save. Was that too fast for everybody? We clicked on MLS Connect. We put in the MLS number with ML. If you leave off ML, it won't go anywhere. Have I lost everyone?
Some of us are still waiting.
It's just waiting.
Come
All
on.
right.
All up bidding.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, look at the picture finally showed up. May not be the best picture, but it will put the picture not on documents, but it will put the picture on the emails and things. We'll have a picture of the house when you're sending it to people.
How's this different than the picture in the beginning when you started the transaction?
We could have, this has replaced that picture. It's replaced that picture. It's the same picture. So has everybody been able to get to this point?
No, it's still thinking.
Still thinking.
Still staying.
I think, is this like the initial one, once you get, you know?
Now, the computer I'm using has a lot of RAM. Right. So that may be why it's going faster. So let me just talk about that. So it says it has the address, which doesn't really match. MLS Connect. Now, what this has done is it doesn't have everything that you might want, but it has most everything that you're going to need. And so you don't, can I move beyond this?
Sure.
Yes.
It includes a PIN number as well.
Yeah, I'll show you. Well,
That's nice, you don't have to copy.
we're going to go to documents. So we're still in this little group here. The history, by the way, will tell you everything you've ever done on that particular property. We're not really haven't done that much. You can export it and see, you guys, it's infectious. It slowed me down too. Chris is probably doing, I shouldn't blame him. So that's interesting. There we go. So that I went to the history. Let's go back to documents. And what I want you to see is when we click on Coversheet. Now, the other tip that I would have for you to save you time and hassle is to focus on the cover sheet. What I may do before the next class is I'll print one out and take a highlighter and mark it up or circle it so I can make copies. The reason that I might do that is because not everything that they ask for on the cover sheet actually can be populated into a form. And what I don't want you to do is to think, well, I've got to find out every piece of information that's in the cover sheet, because a significant part of it never gets populated onto the form. And so people oftentimes ask me, well, then why do they have all this stuff on the cover sheet if nothing ever, if it doesn't get populated? And this cover sheet has been around for a really long time, back at a time when real estate agents would print it out and carry it with them, right? This is before cell phones and stuff like that. And we used to have these folders, these great big folders that were like legal size, and they'd be stuffed with papers, and you would take the transaction cover sheet and staple it to the outside, and would have all the kind you could look at it. And we don't do that anymore, right? So what I'm going to do a little bit of this now because I know which fields are important and which ones aren't. But here, let's just go through the cover sheet. The buyer's name, Billy Buyer. Now, street address, city, state, zip, and all that information does actually populate on the residential purchase agreement. My suggestion is you not fill it out, right? I'm not convinced that the listing agent and the seller need to know the buyer's address. I happen to have known of a real estate agent in San Jose who would he would list homes at a ridiculously low price, like $150,000 under market value, have 50, 60 offers made, and he would go through and look at the address and names of the buyers and would reach out to contact them directly to try to get them to work with him, right? So there's no reason to tell them necessarily, yes.
That shows up where the address.
On the residential purchase agreement where the buyer signs, the address of the buyer will show up underneath their name. I think so. It used to.
And not their cell number either.
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
I just printed one up this morning and it doesn't show up.
And then that was changed in the last revision.
Okay.
So let me just, so then there's still no need to put it in there. Because, so let's see, where it used to be, and I'm happy to know that it's gone because I could modify what I tell people. So this is the residential purchase agreement, and notice it has attached forms, the disclosure requiring agency. They've already put a bunch of this stuff on it. Here's the agency disclosure, and the place where it used to be was interesting. And it doesn't, it has the listing agents. So they don't have it anymore. That's wonderful.
Now, Mike,
That's,
if you wanted to include the buyer's email.
well, we do, let's go through. So we're not going to include, if you want to fill out the buyer's address, go ahead, because it's not being populated into that form anymore, but you definitely want their email address.
Besides email address, many times I'll include the cell phone number, because I'm thinking if something happens to me, Lindsay knows how to reach them,
Sure.
because it doesn't populate on the purchase agreement, correct?
No, it does not.
Anymore.
There's no, the only part that was there, and they must have taken it out, this one guy might actually have been the reason why they took it out. Because what he was doing, there was ethical complaints about him for doing this. You could put in the cell phone number, you could, whatever, if you want to. There's also information that we normally collect on a transaction that would have it, but you definitely want the email, right? The one that, and notice I put in one of my emails, you'll see later, seller's name is auto-populated from the MLS,
If it's there.
if it's there. It's always good to talk to the listing agent because sometimes what it says on the MLS is not the name of the seller.
That's true.
Sometimes it's something, who knows what, right? Sometimes you might want to talk to them. Now the street address and all that information you don't need for this form because that's not necessarily the property address. It could be, but that comes up later. And the email address, you would only get that is if you had a very cooperative listing agent where the seller's overseas or something like that. And it's possible for this all to be in one loop, but usually listing agents don't want it all to be in one loop. They want you to send it to them and then they'll send it to the buyer. Although it would be possible, you'd need their email address. And look what's happened is it's filled out this information, including the APN, the list price, and all this other stuff. Why don't I just go, how much time do I have? All right. So what else would we want to do here? Purchase price. This is really what the price offered is, right? So purchase price would be whatever you're going to offer. Let's just say, and the purchase agreement date is the date that this contract is being written. It's not necessarily the date that the contract is signed. It's not necessarily the date that the buyer signs it. So if I'm writing the contract today, now what many real estate agents will do, if they know that they're not going to show it to the buyer till tomorrow, they're going to pick tomorrow as the date, but there's nothing wrong. I've been asked this question many times. If I put down today's date as the date of the contract and they sign it tomorrow, that's the date the contract was written. Closing date, we can either pick a date or later in the contract, we can say 30 days, 10 days, 45 days or whatever. My experience has been is that it's better to pick a date. Because if you say 30 days from acceptance, what if that falls on a weekend? What if it falls on a Monday, which causes some financing issues of interest and stuff like that? And so what I would rather do, this is just a personal thing, is I would rather look at it and pick a day, right? Not a Monday. And I used to not like Friday so much because if something went wrong, you know, we were back to Monday. So I just picked a date. The deposit amount, you could, we're not going to, let's see, what's 3% of 800,000, Joni?
24,000.
See, I have my own calculator. And if we put in 3%, we don't have to do an increased deposit. Offer date is the date that we're actually making the offer. Now that could be this, usually it's the same day, but it could be a different date. Does everybody understand the purchase agreement date is the date that's on the upper right-hand corner of the contract and it appears at the top of every contract. And in other forms, we're going to refer to the contract dated. That's what it's going to say, and that's the date. But the date that the offer is made is the date when both of the, let's say there's two buyers, both of them have signed it. They might not be signing it on the same day. But if we know, let's say it'll be signed today too. That's typically the same day. Expire date, how long does the contract, what does the default say when the offer expires? 3 days. Could you pick a different day?
Yes.
Right? You could, if you don't want them to have 3 days, you don't need to give them 3 days. If you leave it blank, and it'll be 3 days. So, by the way, one of the things that we could have done, and I'm not going to change that or the time. One of the things that we could have done, if this isn't saving us a whole lot of time, but if on our template we had checked the box residential, it would be already checked and would have saved me all that time. Amount financed, we could put that in as well. So what is an 80% loan on a $800,000 property, Joni? See, I don't even, and we don't need a lot of this other stuff. The escrow company, we don't necessarily need, but we might, if we were a listing agent, if this were the listing template, we might have our favorite escrow company, right? Most listing agents have a favorite escrow company, and we might have already put that in. Notice what it did is it put in the listing broker's contact information. We could put in our lender's information, mortgage type. Most of this isn't, I'm going to click on conventional. We still are going to have to fill more stuff out. We don't really care about any of these other things. We really don't care. We're going to click on save. And now what should happen when we click on back is, and we go to the purchase agreement. What else do I want to do? It's going, and we scroll through, you're going to see that it's already filled in. Notice a whole lot more information. See, all that information was filled in. And this one shall occur on, and it doesn't, that some reason didn't fill in. So I've noticed that things are rarely perfect. So if we click on that, it now, see the reason, let me just explain that. The reason it didn't fill it in is because we hadn't clicked on one of these two boxes. So if I click on this box, the date that I had put in before, which I picked, shows up, but I could still change my mind and type in 30 days. So you have to look at it. There's still boxes you have to click. Sereno represents the seller exclusively. We represent the buyer exclusively. And a lot of this, just because there's a blank space doesn't mean you have to write something in. You're going to have to put in information about the loan. All right, we put in the loan amount, but is this FHA or VA? I clicked on conventional, that really didn't do anything. So but if it was an FHA, we would want to click on it. And what we need to do is put in the interest rate. And we need to put in points, if any. And so you need to have if you're doing this, you should have a pre-approval letter from a lender that actually, you should have had a conversation with the lender. You should know what the interest rate is. So you can put it in the form. But it's filled out. I didn't want to go through the entire form today. We're going to be doing that over time. But what I wanted to do is to cover the setup. So what I'm going to click on save, and how much? All right, 7 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to show you where I have some videos on this, but the part that I like about this the most is something called e-signatures. And the e-signature program, which is owned by ZipLogic, which is the company that owns ZipForms, is called Digital Ink. It's been around for a really long time. It used to be kind of terrible. I've been teaching classes on using digital ink for more than a decade, and it was a real struggle at the beginning. And so what happened is a cottage industry has jumped up for a bunch of, the big one is called DocuSign, right? And so many people have a DocuSign account. DocuSign costs how much a month? Anybody?
$100 a year, it's like 300 and something.
300 a year.
Yeah.
When did they improve eSign? Because when I started using it at the beginning of, was it last, no, 2013,
Yeah,
it was terrible.
it's still, I don't, it's, then they improved it before you came to that conclusion. But we're going to do an e-signature. By the way, one of the other things that you definitely want to do, we're going to do an e-signature right now for fun.
Okay.
And then, but one of the things you definitely want to do once you're in, you notice where there's a little picture up here and a drop down, and it has your language, and notice one of the things, and by the way, you can put in your picture. Now, one of the reasons that you want to do that is your picture will appear on emails. Don't you want your picture on your emails that you send to clients, don't you? I do. Do you? So click on view profile, and what it does is that you ought to look at this and make sure it's got your information. Notice it allows you to have a custom email signature. You could boldface things. Now there isn't a place to hyperlink stuff, but you can put in a picture, you could put your picture, you could put in a logo, you might want to make your signature. And if you click on libraries, here are all the different libraries you have access to. And if you click on settings, notice there are two choices up here, DocuSign or ZipLogic, Digital Ink. And if you pick DocuSign, you better have a subscription because the e-signature isn't going to work unless you have one. All right, it's like at least $20 a month. I don't know. That's what I thought it was. So you might want to just look at this. The default is Digital Ink, and there are other things that you might want to look at. GMT, that stands for Green Mountain. No, that's not right. What does it stand for? Mountain Time? Greenwich, is that what the M stands for? Mountain? Mean. I think it stands for mean time. And the reason I'm saying that is I've had clients that have signed these documents when they were in Shanghai and other places. So the time stamps are going to be in Greenwich, I think it's mean time, right? That's what the time stamps are going to be, so that it doesn't matter what time zone somebody's in, right? The time stamp is going to be in that format. I just thought I would share that with you. So we're just wanted to make sure you saw that. Let's go back to now. So should we do e-signatures now? What I was going to do with this is, I'm going to do an e-signature, and I know this may be quick, but we're just going to do one for fun, okay? Yeah, sure.
Should the BMI be in those documents?
And the BMI is body mass index. No. The buyer's material issues is a form that our lawyer recommends that you do, right? David Hammerslaw, who's the attorney that represents Keller Williams, suggests that you add it. The reality is that virtually nobody does. And so I didn't, but the last time I did this, I covered it. So I'll do that now.
I hate it for you.
No, it's okay. What the buyer material issue is, and by the way, the way in which our lawyer explained this is that if you get sued and you represent the buyer, and let's say he was representing the seller, one of the first questions that they would ask you when you're on the witness stand is to go over your buyer material issues form. And what he shared is that virtually all agents say, the what? The who? What are you talking about? Now, what this form is that it's basically a place where you can, when you interview the buyer, you could ask them, what are the material issues that are most important to you in buying the property? Is it school district? Homeowner association? Crime in the neighborhood? Right? Can everybody see how this might be useful if there was litigation? Because let's say they didn't mention neighborhood crime as a material issue, and they signed the form, and then later they told you that they wanted to sue you because you sold them a house in a neighborhood with a high crime rate, and they had told you how important that was to them, and you just didn't do a good job. Right? Does everybody understand that buyers develop amnesia and hallucinations at the same time? Right? It's sort of a combination. They forget what did happen, and so the buyer material issues would be a place for you to discuss and write down this. And also, this is a great little paragraph. A lot of this is covered in some of the other boilerplate disclosures, but it just explains a little bit more. And this is the paragraph that's really good. Buyer represents the buyer's disclosed to broker all material issues regarding particular features, issues, concerns, and requirements important to buyer in their decision to purchase the property or any property. Buyer additionally agrees that broker is entitled to rely on buyer's disclosure of material issues and broker's representation of buyer in pursuing and disclosing information about the property or properties. So basically, we're saying if you didn't tell us now, you can't come up with it later and say this is a big deal for you. Right? So I would put that in our templates. But I happen to know that very few of our agents actually do it. But if you do this and you get sued, you might be happy. Yes.
So if somebody says, okay, crime is a material issue for me, and then they buy a house, how do you still protect yourself against that material issue?
Well, if they say let's say somebody says that crime is a material issue, what could they do? Is it your responsibility to research crime rates in the different zip codes? Could they?
Yes.
Would it be okay for you to find some websites that they could use to be the source of the source of the information?
So you would have them sign something saying you gave them the source of the source?
Well, you could send it in an email,
Right?
right?
And keep a copy.
And all email, this is just a fair warning for those of you that I work with. All email I send has tracking code in it, right? Which means I know if you got it and opened it. Just saying. I've had this for a long time because I used to have agents that would say, I never got it. You never sent it. I never got it, right? And then I could say, well, you happen to be here on this day when you opened it, right? So sometimes you understand how that might be useful, that you could prove that the other agent, in fact, got your email and opened the email, right? But generally speaking, this is, you want to make sure they tell you what's most important to them. Okay. Why don't we do this? So I don't think we're going to have time for the, so we're going to, next week, we're going to do a little bit more we're going to fill out a form, right? How about that? We'll fill out a purchase agreement. I don't take nearly as much time as Mike Sibilia does because I'm just going to tell you how to fill one out. And we're going to do what's number 4. We're going to send it to ourselves. So for our homework, for those of you that are happy to be doing this, is to create a buyer and seller template. How about this? Just do a buyer. Right now, the seller one, we'll do that next week. Doesn't take as long. Add your information, pick out a listing and import with MLS Connect. All right. Everyone who's in the coaching program, I'll probably I'm going to post this on my YouTube channel, which will have this information. But does everybody understand what it would be good? You can create a sample transaction and play with it, putting in your email addresses. By the way, I get asked this question a lot. Can the buyer, if the buyer's a husband and wife, and you were going to use electronic signatures, can they use the same email address? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. It'll send 2 emails, 2 different names. So you could, yes, it's fun. You could create a transaction where you're the buyer and you're the seller and you're the listing agent and you're the selling agent. And it gets a little bit confusing because you have to read and use a different name, right? So that you know who's being sent a copy of what. But you're going to want to get good at this before you're sitting in one of the conference rooms with clients watching you sweat, right, as you stumble and struggle to fill out a contract. You're going to want to get good with this. So I want you to get good with it. And next week, we're going to send ourselves, bring a computer if you have one, we'll send ourselves a contract and sign it in real time online and send it back to ourselves. Doesn't that sound like fun?
Good question.
Yeah.
In the templates, if you highlight anything or make notes, will the other party in the transaction sign be able to view them or not?
Well, what kind of notes do you mean?
Well, for example, just for myself, if I'm in a template and I want to put a note on something, just for myself.
Yes, you can. There are both. See, there's a thing here called More, and More has a section that has notes that you could create for yourself. There's even the ability to, when you're sending it, to have sticky notes and things like that. And it's possible when we get to the actual e-signature part for you to type. You can actually type stuff on the form, right? Like directions and things like that.
Okay, but the default note is not going to be viewed by anybody.
No, it's a sticky note, right, which you could put, and I believe there is a way of sending them if you wanted to people. But usually when this particular sticky note, I believe, does go when we send it. There's a choice when we're sending it as to whether or not we want to include notes. So for example, let's say there's something in the contract that you might think requires a note, right? You could include this on the contract when you send it to people. When we get to the e-signature part, there's a choice about whether or not we're going to include the notes or not.
Okay.
All right.
Is the same true for the highlights?
Highlights, yeah, the highlights is they're going to see the highlights. So that's the reason so by the way, one of the things that we're not doing yet is we're going to look at the, you can highlight and underline things. Basically, with like a yellow highlighter, you can pick different colors of highlighters. It doesn't, people ask me, well, when we're done, is it going to be on the contract if I print it out? The answer is no, but your client will be able to see it. By the way, NA, Phil, just since I will do this and then be done, if you click on this, what it's going to do is it's going to put in not applicable NA on all the different places where you didn't fill something out. And I'm clicking on lookup, lookup fields. That's not what I wanted to do. What else did I want to do? I'm going to go back to more. One of them, see where it says fast fill? Here's the highlighter. We're going to go, fast fill is really cool. This is something most people don't realize is there. If I click on this, what it's going to do is show me all the fields and what's been written in, if anything. Now, the reason for doing this is that we can quickly look at it and see what's missing, what hasn't been filled in this contract, right? And by the way, when we get to how do you use the mobile device, this is sometimes the easiest way to fill out the mobile device, because rather than filling it out on a simulated form with your, stubby sausage fingers typing in the, it'll show up like this, which is a lot more readable on a tablet. That's called fast fill, and it's a good way to check and see if you missed anything, right? Because it will show you all the things you haven't filled in. All right, question.
I have this hang up if I don't know the seller's name, and sometimes you get an agent, listing agents that won't get back to you.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. I'll go to Realist and just include that.
All right, so the question is, if you don't know the seller's name, if the MLS doesn't say the seller's name, the listing agent is not cooperating, would you look it up in Realist? You could. The only problem with that is that dead people are listed in Realist as owning property.
I see.
So if there's a husband and wife and the husband passed away,
Mhm.
they don't go and change the title
Right,
records.
they don't.
So you're putting in the name of somebody who doesn't exist. So what you can do is just leave it blank and let the listing agent fill it out when it gets to that end. Don't trip about it,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes it's in a trust and there's a lot of weird stuff. And so if you're in doubt, just don't fill in the seller's information, let them fill it in. But Realist, that's the only disadvantage. All right.
And last question is under expiration date. I used to always use date when I switched to the 30 days, but yeah, you gotta be careful about the weekend business. But if nowadays you're in a lot of counter offers. So if I put in the date, then do you just do an amendment
Yeah,
on closing dates?
the question about whether or not it's 30 days, it's a closing date, whether it's 30 days or pick a date, there's ups and downs to both sides.
Right.
If you put in 20 days after acceptance, you may need an addendum
Right,
to correct because the date may be on the wrong day.
right.
The problem could be if the seller is unhappy with you at that time and doesn't want to sign addendums.
Yeah.
So picking a date is safer, but then if it takes too long, and right now we're not in the market where it usually takes too long because things are happening quicker, but if it took too long, then it may be more time than they need to close. And I do understand if it's a multiple counteroffer situation, you want to have a tight rein. You want to make an offer with the shortest closing time that you can. Right? And so that would be something to discuss with the lender. But as a general practice, it's safer to have a day than to have a formula to determine a day, because you may need an addendum to change the day if it falls on a day that you cannot close. Right? But that's just the way it is. All right? So next week, right? Everybody going to come back after this? Cool. And what we're going to do, we'll do a seller template. It won't take as long. And we're going to write up a purchase agreement and we're going to send it to each other and we'll talk about other fun stuff too.